What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're breaking down what the community is thinking ahead of Game Week 31. Hence the title of the video, right? Breakdown. I don't think anyone else has used that. I did try and check before I put this video out. I have recorded videos like this before earlier on this season, just with all the chaos over Christmas, double game weeks and all that stuff. They kind of got a little bit lost, but there's quite a few key decisions that people are making this week. Free hit decisions, wildcard, selling Trent and all that kind of stuff as well. So we're going to talk through what the community is thinking. I put out a form on Twitter earlier this morning. We got over 1,500 responses. So obviously it's a small percentage based on like the whole, FPL manager base, right? There's over 9 million, but it kind of gives you a good idea into what kind of active managers are thinking about. So if you enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button as always. And if you can think of a better name for these kind of videos, I'm not saying we'll do them every week, but if you can think of a better name, let me know in the comments below. Okay. So first of all, we're talking about selling Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, I've got to be honest, when I put these things out, obviously some people might be influenced by what I've said before in a video and stuff like that, and more engaged managers might think differently to those that are less engaged. But I did not think it would be so split around whether to keep him or sell him. I thought that a lot of people would just keep him because it's the easy thing to do, right? He's a player we all want when they're fit. We're going to want them long term. If he's fit for the rest of the season, we're definitely going to want him back in our teams. It can be a bit of hassle to sell him and then get him back. But the community is very split. So it's just in favour of keeping him. But a lot of people are looking at selling him. Now, obviously, we need to wait and see what Klopp says. I've already said that this week. And if he rules him out of Watford, then you've got Watford, Man City, and then a game against Man United in Game Week 33. I'm right now erring on the side of keeping him. But for my team, I can get someone else in, like another premium defender, without having to sell him. I think it's a little bit different if you can't do that. I think ultimately you probably want to keep your options open that you can get him back in fairly easily, even if that's just for one hit. You don't want to spread the money too much around because then that makes it much more difficult to get him in. And if we have a quick look at the fixtures coming up kind of later on in the season, it's not that far away, right? The end of April, but Everton, Newcastle, Spurs, Southampton, Wolves, they've still got a game against Villa to rearrange as well. These are probably fixtures you're going to want Trent for if he's fit, but if you could maybe swap him out, so I've got him here for like a Cancelo, Robertson, whoever it might be, then if you really needed to get Trent back, then you do. If he's out, right, if he's definitely out for Watford, and the reports coming out are kind of that he's in a race to get fit for Man City, so he might not even be back for Man City. If he's back then for Man United, he might get eased back in. They don't want to rush him too much. There could be the next 3 game weeks to go without. There's only 8 game weeks left. That's a lot of time to have money on your bench. So I can see why a lot of people are looking to sell him. And I don't think it's that bad of an idea necessarily. And I think if he does miss the next 3, and you've gone to someone like Robertson, for example, we're going to talk about the best replacements in just a second, then you've only kind of got to go like another 4 to 5 game weeks without Trent. And yes, he could hurt you, but it might be a risk that's worth taking. Like, I think if he was fit right now, Watford at home, no one even thinks about selling him. But circumstances do change. And Trent missing 3 out of the last 8 game weeks, or possibly missing 3. 2 of them are Man City and Man United anyway, where you could see both teams scoring. That makes him like a little bit less valuable to our team. So I would maybe get rid of him if you can upgrade another defender and just bench him, which is probably what I'm going to do. But I wouldn't want to spread the money out so far and so thinly that you can't get him back easily. It's a little bit different if you're on a wild card in Game Week 34. I think if you're doing that, there's much more reason to sell him and just hope that he goes down in price so that his buyback isn't that expensive. But if you bought him for 7.5... and he's gone up to like 8.5, it costs you 0.5 to buy him back. But every time he drops in price, it costs a little bit less to get him back. So if you're on a Game Week 34 wildcard, I think he's a pretty good sell. If you've got no other way to get a different premium defender, and we'll talk about which ones in a minute, I think he's a fairly decent sell, especially if he's not even necessarily going to be fit for Man City. But if you can get to a decent defence without having to sell him, you can probably hold on to him. So whether you're selling Trent or not, a lot of people are looking to bring in defenders this week. And I think the options I put were basically Cancelo, Robertson and James as the 3 kind of probably best premiums after Trent. Then you got Rudiger if you want to go maybe a bit safer with minutes. Then the Burnley defender, because obviously they've got 2 doubles coming up over the next 3 game weeks. An Arsenal defender because their fixtures are pretty good, also a double in Game Week 33. And then just someone else, right, just in case people just don't like any of these options and they're looking to bring in another defender this week. The talk within the community to me sounds a lot like people are looking to go back to big at the back, so so 4 or 5 kind of premium-ish defenders every single week. And obviously with the state of the forward line right now, that makes a lot of sense. Even if you were playing 5 in midfield, you could probably make a pretty good team that looks good in 4-5-1 right now. So I think that's why Cancelo, Robertson, and James are so high on this list. And obviously fixture-wise, they're all fairly decent over the next few weeks. I would, again, just to come back to Liverpool really quickly, playing Man City and Man United, that is going to be tricky to keep 2 clean sheets in those games. With Cancelo, yes, he has to play Liverpool as well, and I do think both sides will score in that game, but he does have Burnley and Brighton in game week 31 and 33, so I do favour Cancelo myself. I really like Reece James. If he's fully fit, if Tuchel says he's fine, then I may kind of pivot and go for him instead, because I think he showed us, obviously, in that double, even though he didn't play the second game, just the kind of damage that he can do in just a single game. And I know Cancelo and Robertson are both very attacking as well, but I do think Reece James pips both of them and is kind of up there with Trent Alexander-Arnold. So because of the fixture run for Chelsea, like if we just bring it up, I think that is the big difference, is they don't have that kind of more tricky game against like a Liverpool or against a Man City. So if I just bring out their fixtures, obviously Arsenal at home and West Ham at home are not necessarily easy, but I think Chelsea will do well in both of those, and obviously they're at home as well. And then the good fixtures continue, and they've got more fixtures to rearrange. The only real kind of question is, do you trust Reece James' fitness? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking he came back from injury and got re-injured straight away. Now, I don't know if it was the same injury. I don't know if it was just a knock-on of having to play too many minutes as soon as he came back. And we know that Tuchel said in the League Cup final that he played more minutes than they wanted him to. So will they be more cautious? That's what's in the back of my mind. I'm thinking if you want to get more than one of these defenders, I would probably go for Cancelo first and then get Reece James possibly for game week 32 if he's kind of proved his fitness and started in game week 31. Obviously, there's all that talk as well about Chelsea, and obviously they're not necessarily going to get anywhere near the league title now. They're probably not going to drop out of top 4. Will they rotate a bit more? The only thing I will say is if they're going to rotate that much because of Europe, Rudiger is also not completely immune from rotation. Now, obviously, Reece James has had injury issues more recently, so he might be more susceptible to losing minutes here and there, even if it's like a start and then he comes off early. But Rudiger's not completely immune from it as well. So unless you think that Rudiger maybe gets 2 games more than Reece James in the league between now and whenever you're going to sell them, it probably is just worth taking the risk for Reece James because he is just so much more attacking. So I can see why those 3 are obviously right up there. I did also put Burnley on because of the extra double game weeks they've got. I'm not sure I'd personally be looking to bring in a Burnley defender, but obviously they're a little bit cheaper, so you could look there. And Arsenal defence I still think is pretty good. No Europe, pretty good fixtures, double in 33, another game to rearrange against Spurs, all that good stuff. There's not really anyone else I'll be looking at. I am personally trying to get back to like 2, maybe 3 premium defenders, knowing that Tierney and Doherty are probably okay for now as well. They're not necessarily at Cancelo, Robertson and James's level, but they're pretty good options for their price. But I think big in the back is going to make a return, and I think people are going to shift their priorities there, especially because of how weak the forward line's been. All right, let's talk about the wildcard. A few of you probably still thinking about whether or not to use it this week. And by the way, I don't think it's wrong if you haven't used the chip yet and you still decide to do it in game week 31. Obviously, the optimal play for a wildcard is to play it at the start of the week, try and get on price rises, price falls and stuff like that. But the last couple of times I've used a wildcard, I've waited till the very last minute and just made sure that if I do end up wildcarding, I know what team I want to build. So if you're still on the fence, make sure you build your game week 31 wildcard. Do not leave it until 5 minutes before the deadline to then choose the team. You should already know pretty much what it's going to be, apart from maybe 1 or 2 key decisions you're not quite sure of. Now, a lot of people have already used it. So one thing I would say, if you have used it like me, maybe don't be too worried about how much ground other people are going to make up. Obviously, this is only a small representation of the community, like I said at the start, but a lot of people have used it. So yes, there's going to be a small kind of minority of people that still got their wild card. They probably will make good gains, but hopefully looking at this, it's not going to be too bad if you have already used it, and hopefully if you did use it, you made some gains anyway. There is definitely a big proportion of people that are using it in game week 34 instead of this week. I think that kind of makes sense. And again, people might be swayed by what I said in the video, but I think a lot of people that have got good teams for game week 29, game week 30 will also have a good team for game week 31. And I do like the idea of dead ending into game week 33, getting in a few extra double game week players that other people are not either going to have or going to be able to get to, because they'll have to keep those players in or use transfers on them straight away. So for example, right, if someone's on a game week 34 wildcard and they're getting Man United players, okay, I'm pointing to myself as if I play for Man United, then they don't have to worry about them what they do in game week 33, because from game week 34 they're going to get rid of them. And a few people have said to me, you know, if you're bench boosting in 36, why do you have to wildcard in 34? Why couldn't you wildcard in 35? You definitely could, to be closer to when you bench boost, but I think there's bigger gains to be made by getting a few extra double game weekers in game week 33 and then wildcarding out of it. If your team's not looking great for this week, and if you think your game week 34 team will look pretty similar to your game week 31 team, which it probably would if you're using the wildcard, the only big differences would be if there's been like a big injury or something like that to a key player, then you could still use it this week. I don't think it's a bad thing, right? Game week 36 isn't that far away. You can still plan for game week 33, especially if you're free hitting, which we'll come on to soon. But I do think, like, looking at it from a kind of overall point of view, if I had my wildcard now, I probably would save it for 34 and just try and smash the last 5 game weeks of the season and not use it this week. But like I said, a lot of people have already used it. So there's big gains potentially to be made for those of you that have held on to it. And for those of us that have already used it, fingers crossed it won't be too bad. I'm not sure I've ever seen such a lack of appetite for double game week players, especially right in these cases that both Burnley and Everton will have more double game weeks to come, right? We know that Burnley have got one in 33 and they'll have another one to reschedule as well. Everton have also got games to reschedule after game week 31. But people are just not interested, right? Most people, and I put how many you bringing in game week 31. Obviously, some people will already own them. I didn't kind of maybe word the question correctly. But I put who's bringing them in for game week 31. 0 was the top, right? So people just aren't interested at all. Some people going for 1. I would imagine that's probably a Burnley player, maybe Pope, Weghorst, for example. You could maybe punt on a Everton player, but I just think the fixtures after game week 31 for Everton, the initial fixtures before games start getting rearranged, are just pretty poor. And there's some people who are going for 2 or 3 or more, but I got to be honest, I just don't see where those players come from. Like for me, maybe I go for 2 Burnley players, right? Pope and Weghorst, if it fits into how my team's set up. But I just don't know who else I would go for from Burnley. Now, we've just spoken about how people are looking to go big at the back. Cancelo, Trent, Robertson, Reece James. People have still got Doherty, Reguilon, maybe Tierney, Gabriel, Ben White. I just don't really know where an outfield Burnley defender kind of fits in. Maybe like Roberts as a 5th defender and just play him in the doubles, possibly. I just think Nick Pope is probably easier to get into people's teams because they're not so worried about the goalkeeper position. There's not really any other outfield players that I'd want, like McNeil or Lennon or anyone like that. And I think the better players are in the Everton side, but Everton just not playing very, and don't get me wrong, right, Burnley aren't like a great team or anything like that, but Everton just not playing well at the moment. I just don't know how much Lampard's going to have improved that over the international break. Like, I'd love to have Calvert-Lewin in my team, or maybe like a Richarlison or a defender or something like that, but there just isn't enough options, especially when the fixtures straight away are poor. And obviously Burnley have got to play Man City, but the fixtures afterwards are actually pretty good, and their game week 33 double isn't that bad either. But if you are sat there worried that everyone's going to have double game week players for this week, not looking likely. 0 or 1, massively ahead of the rest. I just don't think people are interested whatsoever. Jimenez obviously suspended. People are a little bit frustrated with him as well. So I wanted to put in a question about best Jimenez replacements. Now, a few people pointed out, right, there's a couple of mistakes I made with this. I didn't put Rodrigo from Leeds in there. I also didn't put the option to just choose someone else. I only put these options on there. So maybe people were kind of swayed a little bit by the fact I didn't give them an out to go for someone else. And I did put around a similar price, right? Because obviously, yes, Harry Kane would be a great Jimenez replacement, but he's a lot more expensive. If you're wondering where that 0 or obviously the 1 player from Burnley is coming from, I think this kind of shows you, right? Weghorst is not super popular, but in terms of if you are going to make a Jimenez transfer, getting Weghorst in looks pretty obvious, right? I mean, a lot of the other players on this list, so we've got Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison, I just spoke about for Everton. Fixtures pretty poor straight away after the double. Chris Wood's got the double in game week 33, but I think a lot of people just don't see him as an exciting option. Adams, maybe for Southampton, could be good. They got Chelsea in game week 32, but they do have a double in 33. Antonio, I don't really like Antonio as an option right now. I think the next three for West Ham are actually all right, but I just don't know what's going on with Bowen right now, whether he's going to be back. And I just don't know. I think Everton, Brentford and Burnley, I mean, it's pretty good fixtures, but then you run into a pretty horrible schedule that sees Chelsea, Arsenal and Man City in the next 4. And I think if we look at Antonio on his own, like right now, 55 minutes against Spurs, 51 minutes against Villa. He did play 90 a lot of the time before that, but I do just wonder, is he maybe just like a little bit tired at this point? They're happy to play Yarmolenko, so I don't really see him as a good option, and I don't really like Tony either because the fixtures are just quite poor. So I feel like right now Weghorst is kind of like best of a bad bunch. Like if we look at Brentford's fixtures, it's Chelsea away, then West Ham. I mean, basically in the next 5, they've got Chelsea, West Ham, Spurs and Man United. The other fixtures are really good, like Watford, Southampton, Everton, Leeds. And obviously Tony does have the advantages that he'll pretty much always play for 90 minutes. He's on penalties. But again, I'm not really a big fan. I just think Weghorst is the best of a bad bunch. The other option is just to completely tank that position, 4.5 million forward. But otherwise, yeah, I think it has to be Weghorst. I mean, the community also thinks the same. There's a lot of differentials in the forward line if you can pick the right one, because no one is interested in hardly any of them. So a bit like me, I think the community is very kind of torn on whether to use the free hit in game week 33 or 36. Now, I did word this question as if you've only got one free hit left. If you've got no free hit or both of them left, that's obviously the lot of people at the bottom. But in terms of those that do have one, game week 33 versus 36 looks pretty equal right now. I've got to be honest, my general plan this week is to probably hedge my bets, and the transfers I make could be good for game week 33 with or without a free hit. So that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm just not quite sure how much I want to kind of back against the good teams like Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, etc. and free hit in a bunch of double game week players. Like, it's good that you can get them in from teams you don't really want to carry forward, but then if you don't really want those teams, how much do you really want them for game week 33? I think a lot of it relies on what Man United do. If they smash Norwich and maybe get something against Liverpool, maybe a lucky clean sheet, or maybe whichever attacker you buy, Ronaldo or Fernandes, gets a goal in that game or an assist or whatever it might be to add to whatever they did against Norwich, then it could be worthwhile. But I do feel like it does rely on Man United quite a lot. But you got the opposite with game week 36, where it looks like you can make a great team from Chelsea, from Man City, from Liverpool players, but a lot of us are going to have them in our teams anyway. So how much is the game week 36 free hit really worth? There are some people looking at 37. I think a lot of those people will probably be those that are maybe wildcarding in 34. They don't want to use the free hit in 33, or they're dead ending into it. They're bench boosted in 36, and then they're going to free hit in 37, because there will probably be some doubles there. And look, you might be able to make a bit of a different team, maybe take out some of the big hitters that just aren't looking good for that week and just go from there. There's some people looking at a different game. I don't really see too many other options to use it. Game week 38, if you could guess rotation, if managers let us know which players are playing, which players aren't, because sometimes you get that, right? A manager will say that a certain player deserves a chance, right, or deserves to get a start. But I don't think that the number of guaranteed players are going to start in game week 38 makes it worth holding it over any of the double game weeks. Surely there is more points in that. So community is pretty split. Right now, if I had to say which way I'm kind of swinging towards, I'd probably say game week 36. But there's part of me just wants to go for 33, because I think you'll be able to get in a lot more differentials. I think the game week 36 free hit versus non-free hit team is probably going to look quite similar. So maybe weirdly, I put a question in about game week 32 captain instead of game week 31, because I think if he's fit and available and Klopp says there's nothing wrong or anything like that, then Salah versus Watford at home looks about as obvious as it gets. Like Spurs against Newcastle is okay, but I think everyone or the majority of people are going to swing towards Salah. But I wanted to get people thinking about game week 32 captain, because it's not necessarily that straightforward, right? Ronaldo versus Everton, for example, looks pretty good. Man United shouldn't rotate too much between now and the end of this season because of no Europe Europe and stuff like that. The only time that might kind of change is if top 4 suddenly becomes kind of like it's out of reach. Then maybe they start kind of changing in a few different players to kind of see what they're like for next season. But I don't think ultimately we're going to see a huge amount of Man United rotation. And obviously the other option is Salah versus Man City away. Now I mentioned, I can't remember when now, like a game week or two ago, about, is there the potential to sell Salah? Because if you could get away without him for game week 31, maybe because of the World Cup qualifiers, which by the way I don't think is going to be a problem, but I was kind of speculating about it. And then it's Man City away, so you're not going to captain him anyway. And then game week 33, it's a double game week. You'll probably captain a double game week player. Like, could we get rid of him? And most of the responses were, of course you just captain Salah against Man City because look what he did in the reverse fixture. But as it comes down to it, a lot of people, I think, do their captain based on form. And because Salah's got Man City and obviously Kane's been smashing it recently, all of a sudden, a lot of people right now, that might change by game week 32, are looking to captain Kane. So for those of us that don't own him, that could be another tough week to have to sit for. Obviously, game week 30 went okay if you captained Son instead, or he actually outscored him. But how many times is he actually going to do that? I would be more worried if it was Kane versus Newcastle at home like it is this week and Salah was playing Man City this week, because I don't think the Villa are necessarily pushovers. I don't necessarily think Newcastle are either, but it's a home game. And I just don't know how much joy Spurs are going to get in that game. I think obviously, yes, Son and Kane more so, could definitely get a return, but I don't know if he's going to go and get kind of 2 or 3 returns in that. So we might still be okay to captain Salah. My personal opinion around that Liverpool and Man City game is it might be a bit more cautious than the previous fixture this season between the two in the league, where it felt quite open. Now, we're going to see them play each other a couple of times over the next few weeks, which is going to be interesting. But yeah, I just wanted to put it out there to get people thinking, because if you're not quite sure about Salah and you don't have Kane, how sure are you about Son? And if you're not sure about him either, do you just default to Salah, or do you try and get someone different in? Like, there's a lot of people looking at someone else. I'm not quite sure who they're looking at necessarily, because I think once you've it could be Chelsea versus Southampton. Maybe a Havertz punt, a Mason Mount punt. You've got Saka and Lacazette against Brighton, possibly. Fernandes against Everton. Maybe get Fernandes in a week earlier than game week 33. Maybe go for a differential captain. But I don't really see where too many, unless I'm massively missing something, I don't really see where someone else really comes into play, unless people were kind of misreading the kind of question that I put out. So let me know below who you're thinking of captain in game week 32. Obviously 31 is important as well, but I think if you want to go for someone a little bit different in 32, or if you don't own Kane and you really want to go for him, then you need to start thinking about that now, because your transfers in 31 will play into that. So that is why I asked the question. But right now, the community is very focused on captain Kane. So Salah versus Man City could be a bit of a differential. Maybe he'll get a penalty or something like that and absolutely smash Kane. Who knows? Anyway, if you enjoyed that video, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Please let me know if you've got a better name for the video. I wasn't really quite sure what to put it down as. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to start doing these videos every single week. Depends how they slot into the usual kind of content schedule, but it's kind of nice to see what the community are looking at. And I haven't done one of these videos since like game week 8 or something. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Give it a like if you did. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll catch you again soon.